Hi everyone, Miles here, the golf professional at Southwark Park Golf Club. This week I just wanted to speak about a club that didn't exist a few years ago. It's only a new thing, and I'm going to just say to you, is this something you need in your bag or not? And I think the answer for nearly all of you, or certainly everyone with some good distance, the answer is going to be yes. Do I need a gap wedge? And what is a gap wedge? Okay, so the reason why it didn't exist a long time ago is that golf club lofts from the manufacturers have slowly got stronger to a point where it became such a problem that you had a massive gap between your pitching wedge and your sand wedge. So they couldn't sell you a 3-iron anymore, really, in your set. They can't really sell you a 4-iron sometimes because the lofts are so strong. So we're going to need more wedges. They need to sell you the same amount of clubs, and you need the same amount of clubs to cover certain distances and scenarios. So what you want to find out first is, what is the loft of your pitching wedge? It's something you can quite easily do and find out online. For probably the last 20 years, those club specs have knocked around for all the reputable makes. So my gap wedge is a 50. Now I think maybe even 5, 6, 7 years ago, 52 was quite a good number for a gap wedge, but as the lofts have crept stronger again, I'm just going to stop now and say that we've stopped. I think the manufacturers have got to a point. Cobra would be the one for me that was getting strong. This 7-iron looked like a 5-iron. They now have started to retract back the other way, where they've weakened some lofts now for next year and this year. So maybe that's stopped, where iron manufacturers were claiming artificial distances but just by purely strengthening lofts. So you still have the same clubs, they just had different names on them. So your gap wedge is really your pitching wedge, and it was your pitching wedge 20 years ago. So do you need one to cover gaps, and do you need them for certain type of shots? Now wedge manufacturer has gone higher, it's gone more technical. So for example, my 50, it's a tailor-made mill grind 4. It's called an SB, which is the standard bounce, and it has 9 degrees of bounce, and there's some nice sort of chamfering and contouring of the bottom edge to make it do certain things in certain situations. So let's have a look at where I'm going to use my 50, how I use it, and maybe do I need it. So here we are, just short of one of the greens here. This is the 11th green, which runs a little bit uphill. This is where I'm going to go to my gap wedge a lot more in the winter, because I'm going to be able to use the loft to pitch it further up the green for all these chip and run shots. So I don't want to putt it because the grass is long and wet. I probably don't want to use my 8-iron because I've got to try and factor in the roll part where I can take that variable out and try and pitch it further up the green. So there's a couple of things maybe to think about you wouldn't want to do so much. So one of the problems of chipping in the winter is obviously hitting a little bit heavy and digging the club into the ground. So we've got to make sure that our swing is not too steep on the way down. So this gap wedge will allow me to do that. I'm going to not have such shaft lean. I'm going to bring back more into the middle and neutralize it. My weight shift is still going to be slightly more on the left, which you want for all these little chip and run shots, but not so dramatically, because I'm going to try and brush a little bit more and sweep the grass rather than compressing down so much. This will allow me to, for a shot like this, pitch the ball a little bit further up the green. So I can, rather than having to factor in so much run, I can cover a fair amount of the green in terms of, I can pitch it a little bit further up the green, and that will take out a little bit of variable for you. And I would do this over, that sort of running shot a lot more often. So yeah, let's go a bit longer. So for me now, we are in gap wedge country for this sort of yardage. It's about 80 yards. It allows me to not go flat out with a club, not hit it really hard, and I can just ease shots into the green. It's this sensible way of playing golf. It's this controllable way. I could reach this with a big lob wedge, but there's no point, there's no mileage in it. I haven't got any pressure on me to stop the ball. I can just ease this into the middle of the green with just a calm little shot. So just in terms of technique for all wedge shots into the green, especially in the winter, I'm never going to make a long swing. I want to make this controllable swing. It still has to have some acceleration in the downward part just to stop you quitting on it. And we do want to keep some spin on the ball. So these shots are going to be much more controllable. One of my things is equidistant swing lengths. If you're going to swing it back to here on your backswing, let's swing it through to that same point on your follow through. It is a good way of controlling distance. So yeah, look, A couple of things that might help you just with normal golf. Take great care of your aim. I need to aim this blade into the middle of the green here. My toe line is going to be slightly left. You always want to be a little bit open on these shots. Get a little bit closed and you'll hood the face and swing across yourself. We haven't got to have a big expansive turn through to clear a path for the club, but we need to be out of our own way enough. So we want a swing that's in control. And I'm going to go, it's going to be about just past 9 o'clock with my hands on the backswing. And I can just ease that ball into the green. It's a lot easier for me to do a shot like that than to make such a big expansive swing. We still want downward compression. We still want a divot. This is where you've got to be very accurate on your contact. We do need to hit the ball and the turf at exactly the same time. So things just to keep an eye on. I know this is predominantly about gap wedge, but this is about pure technique as well. Anything backwards will be early. Anything too risky and steep will be too steep and downward attacking, which you could thump down. And so we do need to take less divot in the summer, in the winter, but we need to be very accurate in the contact. So keep snugging that club right in behind the ball. The amount of people I see sighting the club behind the ball, you don't want that. You need that club right between the ball, almost the leading edge. You're never going to move it, but tuck it right in because that's your initial point of contact. And very still in the middle here, no movement of your head or sternum until that ball's left you. And let's go for that little 9 o'clock 3/4 swing. I'm just going to ease that into the middle of the green. And it's just a much more sensible way to play golf. Let's move on. Now, going right back to where we started, do I need a gap wedge? There is only one way to really find out. It is to hit your pitching wedge and hit your sand iron and see what the gap is in between. Seems very simple, but it will tell you if the gap really needs filling or not. Like if you have a very slow swing speed, maybe you don't need a gap wedge because that gap won't be big enough. But at some point, there's a tipping point where you 100% will need one. So the only way to do this, let's hit 2. Good solid pitching wedge there, nothing wrong with that. Let's go and have a look at that gap. Both those were hit just about right, so be interesting. I only stopped the video because obviously I need to put my divots back, didn't I? You do take a big divot this time of year, so try and stick them back. Because don't try and stick them back, definitely stick them back in the ground and tread them in gently because there's very little regrowth in the grass. So yeah, put your divots back. And I'm just going to walk up here and see how far apart my pitching wedge and sand iron is. So I've got a 54-degree sand iron. And I've got a bladed pitching wedge, so it's not as powerful, but there will be a gap, and a noticeable gap, and a gap that I would need to fill. So yeah, we'll see how far that gap is, but it's probably the difference between being on the front of the green, the back of the green, or the middle, where we want to be. And that looks like the gap I've got here, so spin around. So we do know a pace is about a yard. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24 yards between my pitching wedge and my sand iron. Okay, so I think that shows you perfectly, do you need a gap wedge in your set? Otherwise I've got to manufacture quite a lot of shots to fill this gap in the middle. So a 24-yard span is a long way between short clubs. It might be your difference between your 5 and 6 iron, but it doesn't want to be your difference between your wedges. So for most, you're going to need a gap wedge. There are some stuff you can try, and you're always welcome to try my clubs. I'm not that precious about it. If you want to see if a 50-degree gap wedge fills that space for you, and it's a great chipping tool, then you should definitely consider it. It'd make a good Christmas present at least, wouldn't it? See you all next week. Let's hope for a good week's weather, and this place is drying out nicely.